What is up, everybody? Welcome to another edition of Drive for Show, DFS for Dough here on RotoGrinders. Justin Van Zuiden, Derek Farnsworth with you as usual, breaking down another golf tournament. Just a couple events left until the Fedex Cup playoffs on the PGA Tour that gets started next month. So we'll see who can make their move up the Fedex Cup standings to try to make it into those playoff events that start in a few weeks. Of course, a little bit of a recap here of the 3M Open from last week before we start looking ahead to the Rocket Mortgage Classic in Detroit this week. So first, I'll bring in Derek and Noto. How you doing?
Yeah, doing good. It's an exciting time of the year. We've got NFL around the corner, a lot going on, the NBA offseason, who knows, with KD and Donovan Mitchell. So, that's going to be fun over the next couple of weeks. And then, you mentioned the FedEx Cup playoffs, a lot of money up for grab. We got another live event this week. So even more PGA Tour golfers have headed over there. A lot going on. As far as the 3M goes, man, I can't believe I played Pga over Finau. It felt wrong at the time. My model disagreed with me, and I did it anyway. So my week wasn't great. Hoagie was really my only bright spot. I had the entire Discord playing some Hoagie, and there were sandwich GIFs just flying everywhere. It was pretty fun.
Yeah. It was one of the only times I didn't bet Finau. I almost always do longer odds, but he was one of the favorites last week and didn't do it, and did play him quite a bit in DFS, but it was just one of those weeks where, of course, he finally gets it done, and I wasn't on him with the betting card. But it was just an odd week, a lot of chalk that didn't perform well like the first day, and kind of deteriorated that 6-6 percentage with Pga that you mentioned, and quite a few others as well.
Yeah, man, I was feeling pretty good after Friday morning. Goddard made that huge comeback. So I just needed Steele and who else was it? Tigala, and both got off the good starts and then just fell apart. So, a lot of chalk busted. Riley was another one.
Yeah, Riley was a painful one.
Kim kind of made a comeback. It was the first week of the Fantasy Golf World Championship. My friend had a seat, so I was watching it pretty closely. And Kim was 75%, I think, in that thing.
Wow. It was like the top half moved on, right? So it was like a cash.
Yeah, I think there were 3 or 4 guys over 50%, which is pretty crazy. But that should be a lot of fun for those. First live final, I think, for golf.
Yeah, so they narrowed that down. That'll get whittled down here over the next couple of weeks to get to that final field when they get to that third or fourth stage, whatever it is. But it was a crazy leaderboard on the weekend last week at the 3M. Scott Piercy had a 4 or 5 shot lead headed into Sunday, but he was only like minus 145 to win because Piercy hadn't really been in that good a form. We know he tends to kind of blow up at times, and that's exactly what happened. He held the lead, pretty steady round on Sunday, headed into that back 9. But a tough bogey at 13, and then barely got his ball out of the bunker on 14, and then hit his third shot into the water, ended up being a triple. And after having a 4-shot lead headed into Sunday, he ended up finishing 4 shots behind Tony Finau. Saw some tweets about maybe Greg Norman will let him into live now because that was a Norman-esque performance. But it was a tough Sunday, I'm sure, for Piercy.
Yeah, it was kind of funny. So I was in a text chain with Dan, current RotoGrinders CEO, and Cal, former RotoGrinders CEO, and they were asking me if minus 140 was a good number to bet in before he teed off. And I said, he's gained 11 strokes putting. I don't really have a strong take. And then he was on hole like 11 or something, and Cal was like, "Yeah, we're looking good, Dan." And then from that point on, that's when he fell apart. So all the blame goes to Cal for that one.
He ended up with a 4th place finish, which I'm sure felt pretty empty, kind of like a bad beat in a GPP, in the Millie Maker, but you end up maybe finishing 5th or 6th, and you just fall out of the drop of a hat. But Finau was the beneficiary of it. The Finau might have won even without that collapse. He ended up winning by 4. So Sung J M ended up coming up for a T2 finish, and Grillo as well. Both of those guys had some ownership last week. Hoagie, who you mentioned, also up inside the top 5. So Callum Tarrant was another one I thought was pretty interesting. A little bit wayward on the weekend, but ended up finishing tied for 7th. Danny Willett Callum Tarrant, Grayson Sigg all tied for 7. So kind of an interesting mix of the top price guys and then some under the radar guys last week. Now I thought Doug Gim was going to be there at the end, and I was real salty because I didn't play any Gim, but he ejected on the back 9 on Sunday as well, 5 over on his last 7 holes of the tournament. So didn't feel too bad about not playing my boy Gim. But interesting leaderboard last week. Any other takeaways for you?
Yeah, that final group finished 71, 76, 77. You're not going to see that very often on a course that's pretty easy. And I guess we should talk about Finau. I mean,
who was the third? Piercy, Gim, and who was the third?
Grillo. He shot the 71.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
But yeah, so Finau, I mean, he went out there and won it, but he got a little lucky there on 17. If the grandstand wasn't there, it would have been in the backwater. Hits off the grandstand, bounces all the way across the green, and just lands, 6 inches from the front of the water. He would have had to, go to the drop zone, and that's not an easy shot even from the drop zone. And then hits his driver on 18 into the water. So he gets the credit for getting over those Sunday blues, but yeah, you can't do that in a bigger tournament like a major. So hopefully you'll learn from that. And I think that's all the takeaways from me. Callum Tarrant was on the foreplay pod. He seems like a great guy to hang out with. He was awesome on there. So I'm a fan of his, and I think he's in the field this week too.
Yeah, he's in the field again this week. Going to put him in my GPP article, I believe. But interesting story. You mentioned the grandstand. I had a head-to-head first-round bet. And I was kind of looking through some first-round data, and they played in the afternoon when the conditions were supposed to get a little bit worse. So I took the safer option. I took Smotherman over Hardy. Played a lot of Hardy in DFS, so I kind of hedged that. I played Smotherman over Hardy in round 1 head-to-head, and it was like Smotherman was like plus 110, I think. And the first day was the day that 18 played real difficult because of where they put the tee box and where they put the pin. So 18 played as like the second par 5. It played as like the second or third hardest hole in the first round. And so Smotherman was a hole ahead of Hardy, and he finished at +1, and Hardy was at +1 going into 18. So a par on 18 and is a push. Hardy birdies 18, I lose. Hardy bogeys 18, which a lot of people did, then I win. And after Hardy's first shot, there was no activity on the shot tracker for like 15 minutes. And everybody else finished their holes out. I'm like, he's got to be in the water because that's usually when it freezes. He's in the water. And then all of a sudden, the shot-by-shot data on the website, it says drop in right rough. I'm like, all right, he hit it in the water. It's a penalty drop. No, he hit it in the grandstand. And so it was a free drop, and he was right by the grandstand. And then he hit his third shot from way over by the grandstand to like 4 feet. Made birdie. I was just sure he was in the water. Thought it was going to be a bogey. Thought that bet was going to be an easy win. Not only not a win, didn't even get the push. After the 15-minute delay, he somehow did not have a penalty stroke, and they were just trying to figure out his drop from the grandstand, and then he made a birdie. So that was pretty tilting when it comes down to the last hole like that.
That's super funny because my friend had him in his fantasy golf championship lineup, and he's texting me, why isn't it updating? Why isn't it updating on that hole? So he was sweating it the opposite way you were. But, yeah, he was pretty happy when it said shot 3 to 4 feet or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, it was because it even said – usually it says drop in right rough or drop in left fairway. For a second, it said drop in drop. That's what it said on the play-by-play. It said drop in drop. I'm like, man, maybe he hit it in the water twice. Maybe he's going to make like an 8 here, and then he ended up making a 4. I was really pissed. It was just the mechanics of how it all worked out, and I was sure he was in the water, but it was that was a good story, I guess, by the end of the week. But and he ended up needing all that. I mean, to kind of squeak through the cut line there. If he would have made a bogey or worse on that hole, he probably wouldn't have made it. So, all right, enough about my failed Nick Hardy bet. We'll move on to a new week. Rocket Mortgage Classic, 4th year of this tournament at the same golf course in Detroit. One of the easier courses on tour. I believe it has the lowest double bogey or worse rate on tour, so just not a lot of hazards here. Unlike what we saw last week where there was water all over the place, not going to see that this week. So what do we have for a course this week?
Yeah, that's a good note about the double bogeys. Very few of them out there. There's only one water hazard on the course. There is like that drainage ditch that goes through a couple of the holes, but I think you can play out of it unless it's full of water. But par 72, 7,370 yards. The fairways here pretty wide, and you're going to see a lot of drivers. So I do think off the tee matters. I would prefer distance over accuracy, but if you're gaining off the tee, I think that makes putting yourself in good spots. The greens are pretty small, but they're really easy to hit. Over 75% GIR over the last 3 years, which is one of the highest on tour. So, easy to hit fairways, easy to hit greens. Not a lot of trouble out there. Going to be a lot of birdies for sure. And this is a better field than I think we've ever seen at this event, too. So I'm really expecting some low scores. The par fives, 3 of them are reachable by most of the field, and then there are 4 under 400 yards. So those will play pretty short, too. The greens themselves, they have a mix of POA and bent if you do like looking at putting splits. And that's pretty much all I'm looking at. You can look at Donald Ross Designs as some comp. He tends to have similar characteristics in his courses. But that's pretty much it for me. Just give me some bombers and birdie makers and good putters. You're going to have to make a lot of putts this week.
Yeah, it's a course that, there are some trees and they try to make it seem a little tight, a lot of dog legs. But if you're long off the tee, like you can cut some of those dog legs. We saw Bryson overpower this course. He was one of the winners here a few years back. So it's one of those courses where there's a few different ways to play it. I mean, the shorter hitters can still contend, put it in the right spots off the tee, get yourself some good angles, and you can make some birdies. But you can also try to power it down, cut some of the dog legs, and get yourself a lot of really, really short approach shots. So interesting kind of dynamic with the type of golfer. I think really anyone can succeed here as long as you're making some putts there, like you mentioned, and making birdies. So all right, let's dig in. The pricing not quite as soft on DraftKings as what we saw last week, but still somewhat soft. We've only got 4 guys above 10K this week, and then another 5 above 9K. So 9 total. I think last week there was only 7 or 8 above 9K. So we've got Cantlay, seems to be kind of the class of this field. Finau coming off a win. Zalatoris a little bit of a wild card, and then Cameron Young coming off that really impressive performance at the Open. So what do we make of the top 4 here?
Yeah, I mean, from early ownership, it kind of looks like everyone's gravitating toward Cam Young. I mentioned a lot of people like the Bombers this week. That he certainly fits that mold. He's a pretty good putter as well. And last time we saw him, we finished second at the Open. So I think a lot of people are going to go there. People don't like playing the last week's winner, so that will help Finau's ownership. And then Zalatoris, you're going to have the narrative that he doesn't play easy courses that well. I think a lot of people are going to play Cam Young, and it's hard not to like him, really. He kind of checks all the boxes for me. I think Cantlay is the safest option of anyone up here. And I'll go back to Finau. I don't know. I kind of want to play all 4, but I think I need to X out 1. And right now I'm kind of leaning towards Zalatoris just because I don't know if he can make enough of those putts to finish 22 under or whatever the winning score.
Yeah, it's definitely a thing for him. I mean, when's the last time you've regretted not playing him on a course that plays to 20 under? I mean, I've tried to kind of go against the grain with that a few times, and just it hasn't worked. So, I think I'm in agreement that this week, this will probably be the time that he does. But I mean, he's just hard to trust on a course like this.
Yeah, get him on a difficult one, and you feel great about him. You don't have to look at his stats or anything, but he himself just says he doesn't really like the easy courses nearly as much. So I just got to trust his opinion. He knows better than we do.
Yeah, and Cam Young is probably that guy that if he wants to take the Bryson approach and try to overpower the course, it makes sense that with the way he was driving the ball at the Open, it was pretty crazy to see how well he was driving it, and he was out driving Rory on the final round. So
speaking of Bryson, this is where he broke the stroke gain around the green, stroke gain approach model, because he kept hitting it so close to the green on all the par 4s that it was going down. Right. He just had no approach stats. So kind of funny.
Yeah, I was pulling up the shot by shot from that tournament. So and that was, let's see, that was 2 years ago that he won it. So at 23 under. But okay, so the first round on we're just gonna do the drives here. I'll ignore the par threes, but the first round, the first hole, his drive was 345, so he had 59 yards in. The second hole, his drive was 322. That's a longer one, so he still had a wedge there. Third hole, his drive was 348, and he only had 50 yards. Fourth hole was 344. That's a par 5. Sixth hole, that's a 2-shot hole for everybody. Seventh hole is a par 5, hit at 341. See, the eighth hole, he missed the fairway. 10th hole hit at 317, was only 100 yards out. 12th hole hit at 330, is only 130 yards out. 13th hole, he basically drove the green, 354 yards. He was only about 10 yards off the green. 14, he hit at 376 on a par 5, had less than 200 yards in. 16 hit at 336, only had 120 yards in. 17 par 5 hit at 377, had less than 200 yards in. You get the picture. He's just putting it inside, 50 yards on a lot of the shorter par 4s, getting all the par 5s in too. And Cameron Young, if he drives the ball like he did in Scotland at the Open, I mean, he could play that same approach to this course.
Yep, and he's pretty good around the greens too. I would say his approach is probably the worst part of his game. So yeah, I really like the mold for Cam Young this week.
Well, we'll see how he tackles that, and it'll be interesting to see how he plays some of those holes. All right. Otherwise, I think we're pretty much in agreement on that range. We move down into the 9K range. We've got Max Homa. Cameron Davis was a pretty popular play last week, and is he the defending champion here? I believe so.
Yes, sir.
We've got Adam Scott, Keegan Bradley, and Kevin Kisner rounding out that 9K range. And Noto and I have talked about this enough. Kevin Kisner is always going to grade out horribly statistically, particularly when he's 9.1K. And almost every time in these spots, we just say, well, he's not good statistically. We're just going to X out Kevin Kisner. And then Kevin Kisner goes out and finishes top 10 again. He mentions he loves this course. He's finished top 10 here the last 2 years. I'm going to throw the stats out the window. I'll just play Kevin Kisner on a course that he likes, and we'll just deal with it and see how it goes this time. So I'm ignoring the model data this time. I'm going to play Kisner at 9,100, and it feels gross. But you can talk about the 9K options.
Yeah, I'm with you. We talked about it. There's like 6 or 7 courses. You just play him, even when he's expensive. I mean, he's 40-1, so the books don't want to take too big a liability on him. And yeah, he has those vibes. And when he has the vibes, he tends to play well. You mentioned the back-to-back top 10s. Played pretty well at the Open Championship too. T21 on a course where a lot of the bombers played well. So I like the form coming in. I like the history. So I will be on him as well. Love Max Homa up at the top. He's a really good putter, especially on bent and Pga greens. Pretty much has a complete package. He's 2 for 2 here as well. And then everyone else just feels overpriced to me. I'd rather go up into the 10Ks, I think. Nothing against Cam Davis, but I mean, he's $800 more than last week, and this is much better field. Adam Scott, I just don't know if he has that much upside. I don't know if he cares about these events. He's come out and said, similar to Kisner, he cares about like 8 events a year. Keegan, does he make enough putts to finish 20 under? I don't know. So yeah, I like Kisner at the bottom and Homa at the top.
Yeah, I don't like much else in this range either. Scott at that price, I'm definitely out. Davis, just some weird stuff, with being the defending champ and the responsibilities that go along with that. Not a position that he's obviously in all the time. So I worry about him this week as well. And I think I'm out on most of the rest of this range as well, outside of certainly Kisner. Homa is fine at the top, though he will be popular. All right, let's move into the 8Ks. Some of your favorite options in the upper part of that range.
Yeah, at the top you have Matt McNeely. Historically, he's played long, easy courses very well. And he finished T49 last week, which doesn't seem great, but he missed a 3-footer on 17 on Sunday, and then he put a 9 on the board on his final hole. So give him those 5 strokes, and he's like T20, T25, something like that. So I like Matt McNeely quite a bit at 8,800. I don't know what to do with Theegala. I was telling everyone to play him last week. Obviously, missed the cut. Most of it was due to the putting, but I don't know. It seems like a good course fit for him, and I liked him at last week's course, so I should probably like him again this week. Riley, similar spot, good bounce back opportunity for him. Probably going to get him a little bit lower ownership than last week. Tringali has the best strokes gained per round of anyone at this course over the last 3 years. And he's so volatile. He burned a lot of people last week, too. So this is like the range where –
This is the range of guys. Everybody disappointed last week. Like McNeely, the bad weekend. Theegala miscut. Riley miscut. Tringali miscut. Hadwin squeaked through the cut and didn't do anything. Like, yeah, all these guys had – and all of them had fairly popular ownership last week as well. So I think – with a lot of these players, you can use the same logic on, you're going to see some people kind of shying away from this whole range and other people maybe going back to the well with a couple guys. I think in terms of upside, Theegala and Riley are probably my favorites. You liked Theegala last week. You got to play some Theegala again. I'm not that you have to play him in a single entry or one lineup type of build, but MME, you can't skip out on him.
I think so too. What are you doing with McCarthy at 8,900? That just feels too much to me.
Yeah, it is. I don't know. He'll probably be one of the last decisions I make whether to keep him in my player pool or not. But it's birdie fest where you got to make a lot of putts if he gets hot, and we know he can. So if he stays single digits, I might end up, since I don't like a whole lot in the 9K range, I might end up keeping him in there.
One other guy I wanted to bring up, Webb Simpson, best in the field on Donald Ross designs. We got the Wyndham next week, which is also a Donald Ross design. And he finally started playing a little better, and then he became really chalky the last couple tournaments, missed the cut by 1 or 2, both at the Open and one other one. John Deere Classic, I think Devin's got it pulled up on the screen. So I think he's interesting. At 8,300, looks like he's going to be sub 10%. We know he can make a ton of putts, and he tends to, play these type of courses well.
Yeah, don't mind that call, and you're getting some guys in the single digits here. Henley is another one. You can see I've got him tagged. I haven't put my write-ups in there yet, but we're obviously taping this on Monday night, and we don't have everything loaded in the system yet. But he's not having his best season by any means, but Henley still, if you look last 4 months, 5 months, 6 months, data is still near the top of this field in approach play. So if you got to hit it close and make some birdies this week, I don't mind going to Henley at relatively modest ownership as well. Anything else on the 8Ks for you?
Mark Hubba Hubbard, he has gone T13, T4, T3 his last 3 starts, and he gained 11 strokes ball striking his last time out. Hubbard's a short game specialist, so if the ball striking shows up again, I think he could be real interesting.
He withdrew last week, but that was like well in advance of the tournament, right? I'm just trying to remember.
Yeah, he wasn't even in the player pool.
Well, I think he was, but then see, because he still has an out next to his name. Withdrew prior to last week's 3M Open. Yeah, it was well. It came out like Monday midday, right after salaries got released. So you can ignore. DraftKings still has him listed as out on if you're actually going to build lineups, but that was from last week yet. So Hubbard is in the field as of now for this week. All right, let's go ahead and move into the 7Ks. Last week's popular play that we mentioned earlier, Joo-Young Kim, Tom Kim, is back in the field this week and seems fairly cheap there at 7,600. Your thoughts on him and some of the other high-end 7K plays?
Yeah, continues to play well. It's hard to know what his skill set is at this point. We've gone a couple rounds where the ball striking has been great, and then a couple rounds where the putter has been really good. So I think you kind of just buy in on the talent. I think he's top 35, top 40 in the world, thanks to that great run on the Asian Tour. So I'll play some Kim. He's probably going to be popular again. At the top of the range, I really like Chris Kirk. Just another guy that's having a really good season. He's posted a bunch of top 15 finishes. Doesn't really have a weakness in his game anymore. He's a good story. He's got back-to-back top 25s here. And he's eighth in my model. So 21st most expensive on DraftKings, 18th most expensive on FanDuel. I think he's one of the better point per dollar options. But it's gone.
What did you say he is in your model overall? 8th?
8th in the model, yeah. And the Nodal rating should update soon. I uploaded them. I don't know. Some on the back end.
Yeah, check back if you are a premium subscriber, and what you can see on your screen is what you can get in Lineup HQ, all the finish probabilities, and you'll notice that some players have that information, the Noto rating, cut probability, win probability. Those are for players who also played last week, so those are still last week's numbers showing. The players that don't have any numbers there and just have the dashes, those are players who did not play last week. So we'll get this week's data. It should be up usually. It's populated by the time Tuesday morning rolls around. So it should be in there soon, and you can check out all that and sort by those columns if you like. Cameron Champ, another player who last week, if you had Cameron Champ, it was lucky horseshoe week for you. Birdied his last 3 holes to make the cut on the number, and then had to sweat the cut line not moving in the afternoon. So 3 straight birdies to make the cut. If you follow the bomber angle, I suppose he's fine. Though I don't play him a whole heck of a lot, and I don't know. I don't really have a strong take on him at 7,600, but it was just an impressive made cut from him last week. More players who kind of disappointed last week with Brendan Steele down here at the lower part, right at 7,500. Goddard's pretty cheap this week at 7,400. Another guy who can hit it plenty long off the tee. Nick Hardy, who we talked about last week. A lot of these guys are relatively underpriced compared to, we see some of the top end guys are more expensive than they were last week. A lot of these guys aren't. Doug Gim was in the mix last week. If he would have ended up with that top 5 finish, probably be a little more popular than he's going to be. So anybody you like in particular at the bottom part of the 7K range?
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up Champ. He's really interesting. Definitely the bomber in the field. And he's a really bad putter overall, but he'll have those weeks where he gains like 8 strokes putting just out of nowhere. So I think he's an interesting guy to play in MME. Certainly not a guy you want to trust in single entry. I like the Steele bounce back. It was all putting. I think he lost 6 strokes putting last week. So don't expect that to continue. I think he's in a good spot. Pendrith, in his first start back, finished T13 at the Barbasol. We know he's long off the tee and can putt well. So I think he's interesting. I like Troy Merritt. He's played this event very well over the last couple of years. And at the bottom, I have a little interest in Alex Smalley. We always play him. We always talk him up on this show. He's been playing some great golf. I think he's got 3 straight top 25s in 3 of his last 4. And one of them was at the Scottish Open, which I think was even more impressive since he probably doesn't play a lot of links golf. So he's interesting. And then at the very bottom, I've got to go back to Patrick Rogers. Anytime we get course is long, he can hit a lot of drivers, and he's a good putter. So, I like Patrick Rogers at 7.1 as well.
If you want to play the angle of some guys who played well last week, I mentioned Callum Tarrant at the top of the show. Just got off to a little too slow of a start on Sunday and Saturday, or he could have been in the mix, still ended up with a solid top 10 finish. Grayson Sigg, another guy who played well last week, faded just a little bit on Sunday, but another top 10 for him as well. So those are a couple guys right now. We've got Sigg at 5% ownership. We've got Tarrant at 9%. We've got Rogers, who Noto mentioned, at 2% ownership. So you can spread out your lineups a little bit here at the bottom. Adam Svensson is still grading out as somewhat chalky. What do you make of Svensson this week? He was another guy that pretty much ejected last week.
Well, at this point, I'm having a hard time, trusting him to make those 8-footers in a putting contest. So ownership dependent. I'll probably have a little bit in my pool, but not a guy I would trust like I did last week. Couple questions. Any love for Thor Bjornsson? Talented amateur, 5th in the amateur world golf rankings. And when we saw him at the Travelers, T4, he was right there in the mix towards the end, and then kind of blew up on the par 5. But he's interesting at 71. And then also a question on Harris English, who, certainly underpriced for the talent level. We just haven't seen a lot out of him since he's come back from injury.
Yeah, I'm probably out on him until we see some results. I think Thor Bjornsson is interesting. I'm curious to see if he becomes the cute play that everyone ends up on by the time we get to Thursday. Like right now, we got him at 2%, but I've seen his name bantied about in a few spots already. So I don't know. I'm kind of wait and see approach on him. One of those spots where if he's chalky, I'll probably pass. If he ends up being, 5%, I think you can play him in multi-entry for sure, but wouldn't make a single lineup for me. Stewart Cink, another guy that had a fairly solid showing last week as well. So lots of plays here in this kind of 7K to 7.5K range that you can use to round out your lineups. Michael Gliggitch is another guy that you can make an all-Canada lineup down here and get quite a few names that are either have some upside like Pendrith and Svensson, or have been playing, some better golf. Gliggitch had a good week, top 20 finish, I believe, last week. So that rounds out the 7Ks. And again, a lot of options in there. And it's another one of those weeks where once you get under 7K, there's just not a ton to love. And in fact, I'm scrolling through it right now. I think under 7K right now, we don't have a single player above 3% ownership. And again, it's a function of there's not a ton to spend up for, not a lot to feel great about at the top end. And so it's really not necessary to get super cute down under 7K, particularly since there's a lot of strong plays in the 7 to 7.5K range. So is there anything that stands out to you amongst all these cheap guys?
Not really. Similar to last week, the 6K guys just really rate out as poor point per dollar options, which usually isn't the case. So it just goes to show that the talent level really drops off down here. But David Lipsky is 6,800. He's missed a lot of cuts, but he also does have some upside. Nate Lashley, so he won here in the first year they played it. But I went back and looked at his game log. In his last 18 events, he's either finished top 30 or he's missed the cut. So I mean, typically you want upside out of these 6K guys. So if he's going to make the cut, he's going to finish top 30. And then Lee Hodges has gained 18 strokes ball striking in his last 4 starts, which I think is better than you're going to find from most guys down here. So 6,800, I like him and Lipsky, and then maybe a little bit of Lashley as well.
Yeah, I might sprinkle in Lipsky as well. I usually play him when he's, he had a few weeks where he was chalky. And I don't mind maybe sprinkling him in when he's a little bit lower owned at that price. Otherwise, I don't have anybody down here. I am going to be living in the lower 7K range for most of my round out players for my lineups. Or if you've got lineups where you want to be aggressive with the spend ups at the top, maybe you go with 2 guys at 7,100, 7,200, and that functions just the same as punting 1 spot. So that seems to be the better approach this week. So, All right, we've got the Wyndham Championship, another Ross design next week, as Noto mentioned earlier. That is the last event before the FedEx Cup playoffs. Then we'll have the top 125 and ties, I believe, or top 125 in the standings, starting off the playoffs at the FedEx St. Jude in a few weeks. Then they'll knock it down to the top 70 in the standings for the BMW, and then the top 30 for the final event at the Tour Championship, which rounds out the month of August before we get rolling with the final year of the wraparound schedule before the PGA Tour is making a bunch of changes. But one more year of the usual fall swing that gets us into September and the fall season. So we'll be back next week to break down the Wyndham Championship. Until then, Noto, anything else before we get out of here?
We have a couple of listener questions if we want to kill
Sure, go for it. Yeah, I didn't have that pulled up. I should do that now.
All right, so Harry Brandt, longtime viewer of the show. I think he's in the Fantasy Golf World Championship looking to advance to the top 40. So good luck to him.
So they got it down to what?
150,
the top,
and then the top
150?
Top 40 after this week.
And so this week it's more, you got to finish 40 out of 150, and if you get top 40, you're in the finals?
Right. So who do you like for safe options for a single bullet lineup?
It's interesting because I don't know how safe, like 40 out of 150, you got to finish in the top, almost the top quarter there. So I don't know. I think people will still maybe play that a little too safe, and you're probably going to see a ton of chalk end up. That's interesting as to how to play that when you've only got like one lineup through there. Would you play that like a cash game? I would
play it like a cash game, but with like 2 pivots probably.
All right. So who's the one guy you got to play in a cash?
I would play it like a single entry GPP probably, because there's a lot of guys with like 15 entries in this, so they're probably gonna mix it up a little bit. I think I can't remember who it was, but he got all 15 through. Peter Gibbons, I think. Just amazing to get that many through. But anyway, really safe options that I'm seeing. Kirk and McNeely kind of stand out right off the bat for me.
Yeah, I mean, I think you start with either Cantlay or Young. I don't have a strong take on, which one of those two. If you don't feel safe with Young, then start Cantlay. But I think you start with one of those two guys. And then you can mix in those guys that Noto mentioned, maybe a Tringali or something like that as well. And then find yourself one or two GPP pivots. So I think that's the thought process for me.
I like it. And Tringali, he's going to be very low owned in that thing, I would guess.
Yeah, I mean, it'd probably be 8-10%, but he's generally safe enough.
Yeah,
and,
no, I like him.
I mean, that's the type of pivot that I think you want.
Yeah.
Generally safe enough and somewhat lower owned.
All right, and then last question. What about Danny Willett, currently 135th in the FedEx Cup, so playing for his card a little bit over the next 2 weeks?
Yeah, I don't know. I tried playing him a few weeks back, and he got dead last. It was +6 or something like that. So I think I'm out on Willett, but that's more of a bias than anything. I'm probably not the person to ask about him.
One positive is he's a great putter, and he has played here, looks like all 3 years. So, or no, the last 2 years, finished 4th in 2020. So you can make a case for him as a MME guy, but nobody I would play in, 3 max, 5 max.
Robbery in the Discord chat says eat the hoagies.
Yes.
So
I said I'd eat 10 hoagies if hoagie top 10. He was supposed to eat 6 in an hour. I don't have a time specification on mine. 10.
All right. Well, we'll let everybody get to the sandwiches, and with that, we'll get out of here. So thanks to Devin for producing for us behind the scenes. Thanks to Noto for joining me. I'm Justin. We'll be back same time, same place next week. Good luck with all your lineups, everybody, and good luck to those of you who are in the semifinal, shall we call it, of the Fantasy Golf World Championship. Good luck in making it to the final round next week. So with that, we're out of here. Have a great week, everyone, and we'll see you later.